Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we sift through the sources, the research, all of it, to really deliver the core knowledge you need.
Fast, insightful, and relevant.
Exactly. And today we're doing a really compelling deep dive into the life and the advocacy of Gideon Dimeglio. His journey really embodies that phrase, defying limits.
It does. And our mission today is to go beyond, the usual motivational cliches. We want to extract the specifics of how Dimeglio transformed his physical reality into this powerful platform.
And that reality, just for context, is that he was born in Utah back in 1994 without arms and with shortened legs.
So we need to understand not just that he adapted, but how he actually engineered that adaptation to become this force for advocacy.
And what's so fascinating, as the sources point out, is that the intentionality started before he was even born. His parents, Mark and Sarah, they named him Gideon.
Right, a direct reference to the biblical warrior.
They knew from prenatal ultrasounds about his physical differences, and they chose a name that immediately set this tone of struggle and eventual victory.
It's like an initial psychological anchor. The sources really emphasize that because they were prepared, they weren't shocked. They were intentional.
And that let them create an early environment that was just rooted in unconditional love and maybe most importantly, a sense of normalcy.
Yes, that sense of normalcy is key.
Okay, so let's unpack that because it's an idea we hear a lot. But I have to wonder, based on the material, did treating him exactly like his siblings ever, create tension?
That's a great question.
I mean, did it set up expectations that were maybe a struggle for him to meet?
Well, that's where the nuance is. The sources seem to imply the goal wasn't to pretend the difference didn't exist, but more to instill this core belief that his value wasn't tied to his physical form.
Okay.
So yes, the path was incredibly difficult, but treating him equally was the very thing that forced this kind of radical high-level adaptation. It showed him his limitations weren't barriers, but problems to be solved.
And that adaptation is... well, it's just incredible. This is where we go past just basic functionality and into really extraordinary dexterity.
Absolutely. That decision by his parents led directly to these remarkable skills. Take his fine motor control. The sources say he learned to paint with his feet at just 4 years old.
4.
Yeah. I mean, think about the focus and sustained effort that requires. Most kids, most adults, can't achieve that with their hands.
So that early focus became a kind of blueprint for everything else. It wasn't some sudden gift. It was years of sustained mental discipline being applied physically.
Precisely. That 4-year-old with a paintbrush is what translates into his current skill set.
Right.
And we're not talking about simple things.
Right.
He uses his feet to type, to play the guitar, the piano. I mean, that requires such complex coordinated motion.
And the detail that really just hammers it home in a modern way.
He texts on his phone.
He texts on his phone, and that just shows that human neuroplasticity, when it's pushed by that kind of relentless determination, it can literally restructure what's physically possible.
So if that first phase was all about the physical challenge, the sources are really clear that the second phase was that internal emotional battle. As amazing as those physical feats are, they didn't just erase the emotional toll.
No, of course not. He wrestled, and wrestled significantly with insecurities about his identity, his self-worth, especially as a teenager.
And that's what makes his story so much more than just inspiration. It acknowledges the pain.
Yes.
He navigated those emotional trials by leaning on these key anchors, his faith and his family. And these weren't just, comforting ideas. They were a structured support network that he needed for personal growth.
And that internal work really becomes the true foundation for everything he does later as an advocate.
Exactly.
And this desire to help other people navigate that same internal landscape, but that was formalized really early for him, wasn't it, in his education?
It was. He pursued studies in both visual arts and psychology. And the psychology part is so telling.
Why is that?
Because his first career goal, as the sources note, was so specific. He wanted to become a school psychiatrist. He saw the need, to help young people who were facing their own internal struggles. He wanted the credentials to provide real therapeutic support. You can already see that passion in his volunteer work as a youth leader at his church.
So if you connect the dots, his education was basically training in, self-expression through art and the actual framework for human behavior through psychology.
And what's fascinating there is how that directly informs his speaking style now.
Yeah.
He didn't just read some motivational books. He learned psychological principles.
Like cognitive restructuring.
Exactly. And behavioral adaptation. And he could then apply those to his own unique trauma.
Yeah.
His message today isn't just a simple, you can do it. It's rooted in a professional understanding of how the mind actually processes adversity.
That is such a critical distinction. It really elevates him from just a motivational speaker to a thought leader who's providing actual frameworks.
It does.
Let's shift gears a little to his personal life. Let's talk about those milestones and legacy, and specifically his marriage in 2019 to Brittany Salazar.
It's a really lovely part of the story. The sources mentioned that Brittany had admired him since they were kids.
So it wasn't a relationship built on pity or anything like that.
Not at all. It was built on deep mutual respect and just admiration for the strength he had always embodied.
And that personal journey leads to this huge, profound step. Fatherhood. He and Brittany welcomed their daughter, Carolee, in 2025.
And the sources spend some real time on this moment. It's important we pause here because of the complexity. Yes, there was pure joy and gratitude, but he also talked about his initial fears, specific fears about his ability to do the basic physical things a father does because of his disability.
Things like changing diapers or just holding an infant safely.
Exactly. It wasn't some vague anxiety. It was a real practical concern.
And that vulnerability is just so key, isn't it?
Yeah.
He didn't just show everyone the happy ending. He lets you see the specific practical fears he had to work through first.
Absolutely. And by choosing to be fully present, using his adaptive strategies, his support network, he proved that parenting is fundamentally about emotional presence.
Love and consistency, not specific physical acts.
Right. And this commitment to family is so beautifully captured in their daughter's name, Carolee.
Okay, let's slow down on that name because it's such a perfect reflection of the support system that got him to this point.
It's more than just a list of relatives. It's this intentional tribute to the foundation holding his life together. The name Kara comes from both of their mothers.
A tribute to that maternal love and structure.
Lee comes from Brittany's grandmother, and Joe comes from a beloved aunt. So he's essentially naming his daughter after the village that raised him.
Which makes perfect sense as he steps into his professional role now. He's managed through Dimeglio Speaking LLC, and his motivation wasn't fame. It was that original desire from college.
To help others find strength in their struggles.
Exactly.
He basically took the therapeutic insight he learned in college and just scaled it up to a larger stage. And his message is so focused. He targets the mechanism of change.
So his talks aren't just, feel-good sessions.
No, not at all. They dive into these core areas, informed by his psychology background, things like actionable steps for mindfulness, deep self-discovery, and this crucial idea that adversity shapes character. It doesn't destroy it.
So what are some of those specific, actionable areas his audience can take away?
He gives them frameworks. Practical steps for overcoming obstacles, both physical and emotional, intense mental health awareness, vigorous disability advocacy, and crucially, a lot of his work is aimed at empowering youth and families.
So he's circling right back to that initial dream of being a school psychiatrist.
But now he's reaching thousands at once. He's using his life as the case study.
And he has this one philosophy, this one quote that just cuts through everything. He says very clearly, your struggles do not disqualify you. They're the very thing that equips you to change.
And that quote, that is the summation of his life's work. He's not arguing that life is easy. He's arguing that the effort it takes to overcome the struggle, that's what creates the wisdom and the authority you need to lead.
And he uses that authority now to actively raise awareness for disability rights and mental health on some pretty big platforms.
Right. We see his reach expanding. He's appearing on places like KSL TV, Christian Community Magazine, the ICU podcast.
He's really mastered being authentically open about the challenges, which has let him transition from this figure of local interest into a real national voice.
And the takeaway for you, the listener, is that this wasn't an accident. It was the intentional engineering of a life, starting with his name,
continuing through his education,
and culminating in the decision to share his most vulnerable moments, like his fear of becoming a father.
So if we just step back and summarize this whole thing, Dimeglio's life is really a masterclass in authenticity and applied perseverance. The value here isn't just that he overcame something difficult.
Right. It's that he then took the psychological blueprints of how he overcame it and turned them into a structured framework to help other people.
So what does this all mean for you?
I think the core insight is that purpose so often emerges from the very things we spend years trying to hide or fix. His life shows that we aren't defined by what we lack, physically or emotionally. We're defined by how intentionally we choose to love, to lead, and to apply our own unique wisdom.
And as we close out, let's leave you with one final provocative thought that kind of builds on his entire journey. Gideon Dimeglio originally wanted to be a school psychiatrist to help kids through formal therapeutic structures,
Hmm.
but instead his life took a detour. He became a national speaker. And this raises an important question. When is the detour from your intended path the very thing, the precise vehicle that allows you to fulfill your highest purpose on a scale you never even imagined?
Something to mull over.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive.